I'm Dacia Posner, and it is my great pleasure to be sitting here with Maria Delgado, who is the recipient of this year's Career Achievement and Academic Theater Award for ATHE. And thank you very much for taking the time to just have a conversation about you and your work and about the purpose of theater and theater scholarship in our current moment. Let's start with just a little bit about you and your background. I'm so curious to know what made you fall in love with theater and how you became a theater scholar.
I don't really know how I fell in love with theatre. My parents never went to the theatre. I mean, both of them had finished school at 16. Both of them were working class. We never went to the cinema. We never really went to the theatre. And it was really when I was going into high school that a production of Julius Caesar was advertised as being performed by students and staff at the school. And I remember, I have no idea why, just saying to my dad, can I go? And I was 11 at the time, and I remember he had to come with me. And he came, and I thought it was the most brilliant thing I had ever seen in my entire life. And really from then on, we had an amazing teacher at school who came into the public school and set up a drama club. There'd never been a drama club before. And she really encouraged me to adapt versions of Agatha Christie plays and do improvisations with my fellow schoolmates. And when thinking about going to university, again, neither of my parents said, that was the first in my family to go to university. I was thinking about doing law, and then suddenly I thought, no, I really want to do drama. And really, that's how it happened.
And what about theater scholarship?
Well, I undertook an undergraduate degree, and then I got a really good degree, so I had the funding to go and do a master's program, because it was just economically, it would just never have been possible for me financially. So I was really lucky, and then I got funding also for a PhD. So I really enjoyed the MA, and I remember the MA dissertation I was writing on flamenco on film, and thought I'd really like to do more on this, and that's really what propelled me into the PhD. And at the time when I began looking for a department to do my PhD in, there wasn't a single drama department in the UK that had French and Spanish. So I couldn't find a supervisor within a drama department to supervise a PhD working across different languages. And I just remember thinking, okay, well, I'll have to go to a Spanish department to do it. And that's what I did. But I always kept up. I kept up staging work. I kept translating while I was doing the PhD. And really from when I finished the PhD, I was pretty clear I really wanted to go into a drama department rather than a Spanish department, even though my work has always been a dialogue between those different disciplines. So it really, I didn't really think, oh, I'm going to be a theatre scholar. I just really enjoyed my undergraduate work. I really enjoyed the masters, and I had more questions to ask. It felt when I finished the masters that there were still things I needed to find out. I needed to spend time in libraries and archives, and it was the same with the PhD. And then when I got my first job, I couldn't believe it. I felt I was so lucky, and it really just. It was just really from there on, just continuing, just asking questions and being part of developments that were about trying to set up new structures for theatre, bringing in different kind of intellectual traditions, different kind of national and international traditions to the teaching of theatre, and really working against what I felt when I first entered into theatre studies in the UK was an incredibly Anglophone discipline. So many of the paradigms I felt came from Anglo-American, and really asking questions about why that was. And when people talked about Europe, they really meant the UK, France and Germany. Spain was kind of, hanging off the bottom of Europe. And as somebody told me quite early on, and I think it was in my first job, well, Spain's not really Europe, is it? It's kind of closer to Africa. And I'm thinking, okay, I think we need to have a conversation about this. So really from the very beginning, it was about beginning to to question. And you know, my curiosity around how much Spanish theatre was being made with artists coming from Latin America led me to a whole series of new questions around transnational exchanges and collaborations. And you know, my interest in actors took me to work in film. Because I found it really difficult to think about acting in theatre without thinking about acting in film, and equally with directing. So it's always been about questions, just asking new questions that take you to new places and new encounters and new collaborations.
So one of the things that I think really connects with what you're saying is, you know, this drive to ask questions and to ask questions in different disciplines and across disciplines and in different countries and across countries. One of the things that really strikes me about your work is how multifaceted you are. I find it really inspirational that you're a theater historian, you're an editor, you're a translator, you're a teacher, you're a curator, you're a critic, you're an organizer of festivals. You've found a way of doing so many different kinds of things in pursuit, maybe, of those questions. What's the value of that been to you, and what do you think the value of that is to the field? You know, being able to look at things from multiple perspectives.
I think, you know, for me, it's always been about curiosity and about conversations. You know, one of the things about editing, I guess, was that the process of editing is about conversations. The moment you're working with somebody, you're having a conversation about something, whether it's their work or your work or a set of ideas or paradigms. The idea of dialogue is built into that very encounter. And I was very lucky that I was edited quite early on in my career by Marvin Carlson and David Bradby, both of whom were scholars with a non-Anglophone focus, both of whom strongly encouraged me to write and disseminate my work, and both of whom have a strong sense of civic responsibility. And to work with them quite early on in my career, really, that was a very strong model for me. And so I always continued. And with David Bradby, we edited a number of books together. We began working on contemporary theatre review together. And I remember when Taylor and Francis approached us about taking over the journal as editors, it was always about a dialogue, and it was always about bringing on board new members of the team to come in and be part of that dialogue. And something like journal editing is about keeping your pulse on what's happening in the discipline. I often feel it's where you're really learning about new initiatives and new directions, and the pleasure in just reading work and having conversations about work in development. For me, that doesn't go away. I mean, I'm as excited about it now as I was in 2001 when we first started working on the journal. And so there is something for me about different ways of working that allow you to kind of to have your finger on the pulse in terms of taking the temperature of the times and beginning to think about where scholarship is going, the new questions that are being asked, and the ways in which you think about, the place of the areas you work within in the discipline, your own work within the discipline, and I don't know, it's been so exciting for me to have those conversations through editing. And there's something, a couple of days ago we had a CTR editorial meeting on Zoom, and it was our first meeting on Zoom as a team. And there was just something that as we finished the meeting, that I just felt uplifted, just having a conversation about the work, the reviews that were coming in terms of book reviews, the online presence, what people wanted to write about and why, the kind of conversations we were having with people about prospective pieces coming in. There was just something about those conversations that felt enabling and inspirational. And I think that for me is about why I engage in all collaborations. So my work in the rehearsal room, when I'm observing rehearsals, again, is about being part of a process, being part of a conversation. And there are difficult ethical boundaries there in terms of how you write about practice that that you witness, and what that involves. But there is something about the process, about engaging with things that often happen behind closed doors, about demystifying, about commenting on the labor of performance that so often can appear invisible, that I think is really important. And often it's about opportunities that come your way. Not so long ago, earlier this year, I was lucky enough to work with the Theatre Times, Magda Romanska and Cassia Leck, and one of the things they were asking me if I would come on board and work with them on their online international theatre festival. And when I said yes, it was before COVID. And I was working with 3 grad students who were the artistic curators. And of course, then COVID struck and the festival became something very different. But the journey was just extraordinary in thinking about what the curatorial line is. How do we think about a range of discussions in the festival? How do we make those discussions publicly available? And the journey for me and for the graduate students in terms of, you know, having a conversation with Thomas Ostermeyer about how his theatre was responding to COVID, what the future it means for them, and levels of state funding and how they differ in Germany to the US or to the UK. And you know, or Mariano Pensotti, the Argentine theatre maker, or Thiago Rodriguez, thinking, you know, asking ourselves also about community. What happens when we can't create the sense of community we get through being in a space with other people in a theatre? What does that mean? What you know, how do we replace that in our lives? What's theatre going to look like? And it was just a wonderful, wonderful experience. So I guess for me, it's always about being open to opportunities and possibilities, and thinking about you know, working with also different people, and being open to the opportunities and the challenges that those encounters can bring. And for me, it's been richly rewarding. Equally with book editing of series, you know, to just, you know, to have somebody approach you about an idea for a book, to enter into a dialogue, to see it through, sometimes over a year, sometimes over 5 or 6 years, a project through, and then to have the book arrive and to think, wow, I was a part of that, a small part, but I was a part of that. I know, it's just, I think it's still, for me, is really exciting and wonderful.
So in this moment, you know, you mentioned how the pandemic transformed the theater festival that was already in process, and the opportunities that grew out of that. I think in this difficult and transformative moment, what would you wish for the theater of the future? And what would you say to emerging scholars and artists who are grappling with our current moment?
Oh, this is a tricky one. What would I say? I mean, I think listen. I think that there isn't much listening going on. And I think it's really important to listen to people. People often want to intervene before they've really had a chance to listen and process. People are often in a real hurry to get somewhere. And so I often say to grad students, but where do you want to go? You're in a hurry to go where? Tell me where you want to go. And then maybe we can work out what the best way of getting there might be, and think about what might need to change along the way. So I would say to take a step back and to listen, and to really listen carefully, and to take time to work out what the dynamics of a situation or an issue or of a problem might be before rushing in to try and solve it, or to try and work out what an answer might be. I think we have to be really honest about the fact that we can't necessarily find answers to everything at this point. To really think through what intersectionality might mean for different communities, and how to negotiate the anger and the bemusement and the feeling of not being in control that a lot of people are feeling at the moment and dealing with at the moment. So I think just finding time to listen. I mean, social media often makes it very difficult for people to listen because they just feel they have to intervene immediately. And to not be afraid to say, look, I got it wrong. I really got it wrong. We all make mistakes, and it's really important we acknowledge when we get it wrong and to think through how to make it better and how to work out how to do it differently. People sometimes say to me, oh, you know, leadership, you know, will you do a class on leadership? Will you do a class on you know, how to be a leader? You know, when I'm asked what leadership is, I sometimes think it's about making a decision. People are really reluctant to make decisions about things, to think through your rationale for making it. And if you get it wrong, to own up to having got it wrong, to think about what you would do differently next time, and to make sure that you do it differently next time, but to take responsibility. I feel that we're living in a world where people have a lot of power and not much responsibility, or a lot of responsibility and not much power. So I think we need to really rethink what the relationship between power and responsibility is, and to take responsibility and to use our responsibility really ethically, and to think about the implications of the decisions that we make, not just on ourselves, but on the widest group of people possible. That's really, really important.
That's a wonderful note to end on. It's such a privilege and a pleasure to be able to talk with you, and congratulations warmly from all of us at ATHE on this well-deserved award.
Oh, thank you. And thank you so much, Dacia. And thank you to you all. And you know, grad students, colleagues around the world, you know, we're in a tough place, but let's work together to make it better. We all know that the potential is there, and the capacity to dream and hope. Let's act on it.